At Thanksgiving dinner, my dad leaned over and said, "You're a failure unlike your perfect cousins." Everyone at the table burst out laughing. I just gave a half smile and replied, "All right then, watch this." An hour earlier, I already knew what I was walking into. Thanksgiving at my parents' place was never just about turkey and stuffing. It always felt like a war zone dressed up as a holiday meal. The food was just decoration for the real event, reminding me, in some subtle or not so subtle way, that I was the family letdown. It kicked off just like it always did. My dad sat at the head of the table, slicing the turkey with more care than he ever used with his words. Mom hovered around Jeff and Brian like they were royalty, gushing over every little thing they said or did. Jeff had made a name for himself as some hotshot lawyer, and Brian was the golden entrepreneur. They were the family's pride and joy. Then there was me. Now, I wasn't jobless. I wasn't struggling. But to them, I might as well have been invisible. My work didn't scream success, my apartment wasn't in a trendy zip code, and worst of all, I wasn't settled down with a picture-perfect family like Jeff and Brian. So when my dad set down his fork, took a slow sip of wine, and cleared his throat, I already knew I was next on the chopping block. "You know, Josh," he said, locking eyes with me like I was some project he'd failed to complete. "When I look at Jeff and Brian, I see what real success looks like: hard-working, respectable, making solid money. And then I look at you." His words drifted off, but the message didn't. He shook his head slowly, like it hurt too much to say the rest. But we all knew he was just building the drama. Then he grinned. You're just a failure." The whole table lit up with laughter. My uncles, my aunts, even those smug cousins, everyone joined in like it was some kind of inside joke. Something in my chest tightened, that old familiar feeling I'd gotten used to choking down over the years. But I didn't lash out. I didn't even raise my voice. I just smirked and said, "Okay. Then watch this." 1 hour later, everything flipped. The second those words came out of my mouth, I caught a shift in the air, even if it was small. They kept laughing, riding the high of their little roast session, but I saw it. That flicker of uncertainty behind their eyes. Jeff leaned back, smirking, and took a sip of his drink. "Watch what, exactly?" he asked. Brian chuckled too. "What, you finally got a real job?" he joked. "Or maybe he's about to pull a rabbit out of a hat. Magician might actually be a better career move for him." More laughter. More smug looks. I just shrugged, pushed my chair back, and stood up. "Give me an hour," I said, calm as ever. "Then let's see who's laughing." I walked out, letting them stew in their own arrogance. They had no clue what was coming. They never did. But I sure did. See, what none of them realized was that I'd been quietly working on something for a long time. While they were busy writing me off, I was building something big, something real right under their noses. And that night? That was the perfect time to let it all come to light. I stepped into my old bedroom, the one they never updated, like a constant reminder I still belonged there, and opened up my laptop. A few clicks, a couple of final moves, and the plan I'd spent years on was finally in motion. Meanwhile, back in the dining room, they'd already moved on without me. Probably still cracking jokes, sipping their wine, and basking in each other's greatness. But in exactly 58 minutes, everything would flip on its head. That night's dinner? It was about to go down in family history. I didn't rush back. I let them keep soaking in their self-importance while my heart pounded with anticipation. I'd waited years for this moment. No way was I gonna sprint into it. When I finally walked back into the room, barely anyone noticed. Dad was still holding court, chuckling about how people used to have real work ethic. Jeff and Brian were trying to one-up each other about next quarter's big business moves. And Mom? She looked like she'd won the lottery just listening to them. Then it happened, the first ping of a phone. Another one followed. Jeff frowned, digging his phone out of his pocket, eyebrows knitting as he read something on the screen. Brian checked his too, and I watched his smirk fade fast. What?" he mumbled, tapping away. Jeff's face turned pale. "Wait, this can't be real," Jeff muttered. I strolled back to my seat and leaned on the table with a casual grin. "Something wrong, fellas?" I asked. Brian looked up, eyes wide. "Why is my company trending on Twitter?" Jeff jerked his head up. "Why is mine trending?" Dad, who was always the last to catch on to anything tech-related, rolled his eyes. "Oh please. What could be so bad that you two look like you saw a ghost? Jeff turned his phone around, gripping it so hard his knuckles went white. There it was, a headline from a major news outlet in bold letters. Exposé, inside the shady dealings of two rising corporate stars. Right underneath were the names of their companies. And next to those? Screenshots, leaked emails, and damning proof. Every shady shortcut. Every legal gray area. Every time they bent the rules for profit, it was all laid bare. Jeff shot up from his seat, red-faced and furious. This is a setup, he shouted. Who the hell leaked this? I calmly sipped my drink and smiled. Told you to watch. Just like that, the vibe in the room flipped. No more jokes. No more smug grins. Now it was their turn to feel the heat. That room, which just moments earlier had been buzzing with smug laughter and self-congratulatory toasts, went completely cold. Dad, who'd been laughing at my expense just a few minutes ago, now looked from Jeff to Brian, eyes narrowed in disbelief. Jeff, usually smooth as silk, was frantically swiping through his phone. This is insane. These were private emails. How'd anyone even get these? Brian looked pale as a ghost. He wasn't even talking, just staring at the headlines like he'd seen the end of his career. Dad, still confused, asked, "What's going on? What are these emails?" Jeff froze. He didn't want to explain. Didn't want to admit his whole shining image was built on shortcuts, shady deals, and straight-up fraud in some cases. I leaned back in my chair, arms folded. Oh, you mean the ones where you faked legal documents? Or the one where you admitted your company's product was faulty, but you pushed it to market anyway? Then I turned to Brian. Or maybe Brian's little gems, or he bragged about bribing inspectors so his buildings wouldn't get delayed? Mom gasped. That's not true. I gave a casual shrug. I don't know, Mom. Emails are saying otherwise. I turned back to the Golden Boys. This stuff is wild. Looks like the media thinks so too. I nodded at their phones. Those headlines are catching fire. People love a juicy scandal. Brian finally found his voice. You did this, he hissed, eyes locked on me with pure rage. Jeff pointed a shaking finger my way. You're the only one who'd have a motive. How the hell did you even get access to these emails? I smirked. Oh, wouldn't you love to know? Truth was, I didn't hack a thing. I didn't need to. They've been sloppy, leaving sensitive files on shared servers, firing off risky emails without thinking twice. All I had to do was look. A few good connections, a little patience, and suddenly, I had front row seats to their mess. But I wasn't about to give away that detail. Jeff turned to Dad, panicking now. Dad, you know I'd never. But Dad wasn't looking at him anymore. He was staring right at me. And for the first time ever. He didn't look disappointed. He looked scared. The silence that followed hit like a freight train. And for once, I was the one in control of the room. The same folks who'd spent years laughing at me, who never missed a chance to write me off, were now dead silent. You could almost hear their little perfect world cracking apart. And my dad, the man who always acted like he ran the show, suddenly wasn't running anything. He kept darting his eyes between Jeff and Brian, then back to me like he was trying to solve some impossible puzzle. I could see him thinking, scrambling to figure out if there was any way to spin this disaster into something manageable. How much of this is real? He finally asked, his voice calm but strained. Jeff shot me a glare so sharp I almost laughed. None of it, he snapped. This is a hit job. Someone jealous, probably a competitor, trying to take us down. Shut up, my dad cut in, his voice slicing through the tension like a blade. Jeff actually flinched. And that's when I knew. My old man wasn't asking because he didn't believe it. He was asking because deep down, he already knew what kind of crap his Golden Boys had been pulling. He just didn't know how deep it ran. He wasn't searching for the truth, he was measuring the damage. Brian buried his face in his hands, groaning. This can't be happening. I've got investors. If this sticks, I'm screwed. I tapped away on my phone, totally unfazed. Oh, it's sticking, I said casually, like I was talking about the weather. Jeff was still glued to his screen, his expression shifting from furious red to a kind of ghostly pale I'd never seen on him before. No. No, he muttered like a broken record. Yeah, I said, cutting him off. That big contract you just signed? Looks like your clients are already bailing. I held out my phone so he could see the public statements coming in hot. We do not condone unethical business practices and are re-evaluating our partnership with. Jeff shot out of his seat, knocking over his wine glass as he pointed a shaky finger at me. You ruined me. I raised an eyebrow. Me? I didn't tell you to cut corners or lie to your clients. I just made sure the world finally noticed. Brian slammed his fist on the table. Why would you do this? What the hell do you even get out of it? I leaned in, still calm, still in control. Oh, I don't know, I said with a shrug. Maybe I just got tired of being everyone's favorite punching bag. My dad stood up slowly, rubbing his temples like the weight of everything was finally catching up to him. He looked pissed, but not in the usual way. This wasn't his go-to-holiday rage. This was deeper. He was worried. And that was new. I met his eyes. Still think I'm the disappointment? He didn't say a word. His lips pressed together, jaw tight. But he didn't need to answer. Because for the first time in my life, I had shut him up. He sank back down in his chair, hands folded in front of his face, staring at me like I was a stranger. The whole table went still, like someone had hit pause on reality. My mom glanced back and forth between us, eyes wide, like she was just now realizing the ground under her feet wasn't so solid anymore. Jeff, still on his feet, was breathing hard, fists clenched at his sides. You think this makes you better than us? He snapped. You think you're some kind of hero now? I gave a little shrug. I don't need to be a hero. I just needed the truth out there. Brian groaned, dragging a hand through his hair. God, shut up, Josh. You don't know a damn thing about what it takes to succeed. You wouldn't last 5 minutes in our world. Maybe not, I said honestly. But I do know what happens when your success is built on lies. Jeff rolled his eyes, still trying to get the last word. Please. You act like you're above it all, but what have you even done with your life? You work some dead-end job, live in a shoebox apartment. I didn't say a word. Just slid my phone across the table. Brian caught it before it tumbled off the edge, frowning down at the screen. Jeff leaned in to look too, and I saw their smugness drain away in real time. What the hell is this? Jeff mumbled. Oh, that? I said, pretending like it was nothing. That's my company's valuation. Hit 8 figures last quarter. My mom actually gasped out loud. Dad's eyes went wide like someone had just slapped him. Even the uncles, quiet until now, glanced at each other like they'd just seen a ghost. Brian shook his head, eyes still glued to the number. No. No way. There's no way you. Surprise, I said with a smirk. See, while they were all busy laughing at me over the years, I was busy building something real. A tech startup. Co-founded it with a buddy a few years back. We kept it small at first, just a few angel investors, a few decent contracts. Then this year, we landed the deal. The one that changed everything. I never talked about it. Part of me didn't want the judgment. But mostly? Mostly I was waiting for this moment. Jeff and Brian always had the family name to lean on. Always had shady shortcuts and special favors propping them up. Me? I built mine brick by brick. No shortcuts. No cheats. Just grind. And now? I was ahead. Jeff sat down like someone unplugged him. Face blank. Nothing behind the eyes. Brian muttered, "This isn't real. This can't be real." My dad finally spoke, voice low. "Why didn't you tell us?" I looked right at him. "Would you have listened?" He didn't say anything. Because we both knew the answer. They didn't want me to succeed. They wanted me to stay the failure. The easy target. The one they could hold up as a cautionary tale to make the others look better. But now? Now the script had flipped, and they were speechless. The silence stretched on, heavy enough to choke. My dad, who was never at a loss for words, looked like he was searching for a line that didn't exist. My mom was still staring at the phone like she expected it to suddenly say something different. And Jeff? Jeff was practically shaking. "This is a joke," he spat, shoving the phone back toward me. "There's no way you built something worth that much. If you had, we'd have known." I smirked. Would you, though? Every time I tried to talk about work, you all tuned me out. I looked right at my father. You told me last year that real men don't waste time on tech nonsense. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. Brian ran a hand over his face and finally said, fine. Let's say it's real. Let's say you do have a company. Why this? Why go out of your way to wreck us? I took a slow sip of my drink before I answered. I didn't wreck you, I said calmly. You did that all by yourselves. I gestured toward their phones. I just made sure the rest of the world finally saw it. Jeff's face twisted in rage. You think you're some kind of saint? You think you're better than us? I shook my head. Nah. But I didn't lie. I didn't cheat. I didn't bribe anyone or falsify records. Then I leaned in just a bit closer. And I sure as hell didn't spend my life kicking someone down and acting surprised when they stood back up. My dad let out a long breath through his nose, rubbing his temples like the headache had finally hit full force. Josh, he said, slow and deliberate. Do you even understand what you've done? I tilted my head. Yeah. I leveled the playing field. His expression hardened. No. You started a war. I didn't blink. I didn't back down. I just smiled. Good, I said, voice steady. I already won. That's when my father's face changed, hardened like stone. He wasn't used to this, me having the upper hand. His whole life, he'd walked around like he was some kind of king, the final word on everything. His opinion wasn't just law, it was gospel. But now? Now he looked less like a ruler and more like a man caught in the middle of a storm he couldn't control. Jeff shot up from his chair so fast it scraped against the floor. His fists were clenched tight at his sides, chest heaving like he'd just run a mile. This isn't over, he hissed through gritted teeth. I'll fix this. I raised a brow, calm as could be. Fix it? I nodded at his phone. It's already out there, Jeff. That bell's rung. Can't unring it. Brian, still seated, mumbled something under his breath. His eyes were glued to his screen, swiping and tapping like he was hoping the headlines would magically vanish. No. There's got to be a way to spin this, he muttered. We'll put out a statement. Do some damage control. I let out a dry chuckle. Oh, sure. Go for it. But maybe check your inbox first. Jeff yanked his phone from his pocket and tapped furiously. And then, boom, he froze. His entire body went stiff like someone had cut the strings on a puppet. Brian followed, unlocking his own phone. As soon as he saw it, his face drained to a ghostly white. My dad narrowed his eyes. What now? I folded my arms and met his stare. Let's just say your son's investors aren't exactly thrilled. Jeff shoved his chair back so hard it nearly toppled. You absolute. Easy, I cut in, my tone cool. Wouldn't want to say something you'll regret. He stopped mid-sentence, trembling with fury. Brian didn't move. Just sat there, eyes locked on his screen, watching his carefully built empire crumble one email at a time. And those emails? They weren't just angry messages. They were terminations. Investors pulling out. Partners cutting ties. Clients backing away before the fallout reached them. This wasn't a PR nightmare. This was collapse. And they knew it. My father's fists curled on the table, knuckles white. His expression shifted, still angry, but beneath it, something else. Fear. That was new. For the first time, he was looking at me like maybe, just maybe, he'd made a mistake underestimating me. For years, I was the punchline. The disappointment. The invisible one. But now? Now I was the one standing tall while they crumbled. And I'm not gonna lie, it felt damn good. The whole room had shifted. The power? It wasn't his anymore. The silence was sharp, tense. Like everyone was holding their breath. Jeff and Brian sat frozen, gears turning in their heads, trying to make sense of how quickly it had all fallen apart. They always thought their money and connections made them bulletproof. But tonight? Reality finally caught up. Jeff clung to his phone like it could save him, then suddenly slammed it down on the table. The crack of it echoed loud and sharp. He glared at me like he wanted to explode. You think you're so damn smart, he said, low and bitter. Just 'cause you got lucky with some dumb startup, you think you're better than us? I sighed and tilted my head slightly. See, that right there? That's your problem. You still think this is about luck. I leaned in just enough to make sure it landed. It's not. It's about choices. You chose to cheat your way to the top. And now you're paying for it. Brian finally spoke, his voice barely steady. You don't understand what you've done, Josh, he muttered. We've got families. People who depend on us. I laughed, but there wasn't an ounce of humor in it. Now you care about consequences? That's rich. I leaned forward, letting the words sink in. Did you care about families when you lied to investors? When you bribed officials? When you cut corners and put lives at risk? Brian flinched. Had no comeback. Then I turned to my father. And you? You spent my whole life tearing me down. Calling me a failure. Holding them up like they were gods. I nodded toward the wreckage that was Jeff and Brian. So tell me, Dad. What do you think now? He didn't answer right away. Just stared at me, unreadable. Then he shook his head slowly and said, barely above a whisper, you were never supposed to win. And damn if that didn't hit harder than anything he'd ever said. He didn't say I was right. Didn't say he was sorry. Just that I wasn't supposed to win. I took a slow breath and leaned back. Well, I said quietly, looks like I did. Jeff kicked his chair back with a grunt. This isn't over, he growled, face bright red. You think you've won just because you embarrassed us? Got a few headlines? I shrugged. Oh, I think it's a little more than that. He turned to our father, desperate. Dad, say something. He's tearing this family apart. But for once, my father had nothing to offer. No lectures. No commands. No excuses. Because deep down, he knew this family had already been broken for a long time. They just never thought they'd be the ones on the losing side. The room felt like the aftermath of a war, quiet, heavy, stripped bare. My father looked smaller now. Not just older. Defeated. His grip on this family? Gone. Jeff and Brian didn't move. Still stunned. Still trying to process how everything they'd built collapsed in a single night. And me? I felt lighter. Like I'd finally shrugged off years of weight I didn't even know I was carrying. I stood up and adjusted my jacket. My voice was calm, measured. Well, I said, I think that about wraps up Thanksgiving. Jeff's hands were still fists. Brian was staring at his phone like maybe if he stared long enough, things would go back to the way they were. My mom opened her mouth like she wanted to speak, but nothing came out. Even my father sat in silence. For the first time in my life, he had nothing left to throw at me. I turned toward the door, then paused. There was a time I would have killed for this. For their approval. For them to finally see me. But looking at them now? I didn't need it. Not anymore. I smiled, just a little. Oh, and Dad? He looked up, still stone-faced. I met his eyes. You were right about one thing. I let the silence stretch for just a second. Then I smirked. I was never supposed to win. And I walked out. Leaving them behind in the wreckage they created. Because in the end, I wasn't the failure. I was just the only one who played fair. And somehow, I still came out on top. I won.